He hadn't spoken her name in 10 years, hadn't dared to, but when the villagers dragged the limp white wolf from the river and her eyes flickered open, he dropped to his knees as if the weight of every silent year had just broken him, and in a voice, cracked by time and memory, he whispered her name, a name he had buried so deep. It no longer felt like language, but something older, something primal, something the forest itself might remember, because some bonds are not severed by time or silence or distance. Some bonds wait curled in the dark, for the moment memory becomes real again, and when their eyes met, the years between them vanished like mist at dawn. Elias woke each morning before the sun, not out of discipline, but out of habit long since, emptied of purpose, moving through the same motions. He fed the hens, chopped wood, boiled coffee in the dented tin pot she'd once sniffed with curious eyes. And though no one else remembered, she had slept beside the hearth on winter mornings. He still placed the second log where her body used to curl as if warmth alone might summon a ghost. He never called her name, but sometimes paused at the threshold of the forest, just long enough to suggest he might still be listening on walks he carried dried meat in his coat pocket, and told himself it was for stray dogs. Though no dog ever came, and every night he left the back door unlatched not out of forgetfulness, but because locked doors had once made her restless, and it was easier to live as if she might return than to admit she never had the villagers said little of it. They'd grown used to his silences and weathered eyes, to the man who nodded, but rarely spoke to the flicker of pain that passed across his face when a wolf howled far off in the hills, a sound the others ignored, but which always made him still and inward. He had rebuilt his life with calloused hands and careful distance, but beneath the quiet there was always the echo of paws in snow, the imprint of a vanished presence, the shape of something too loved to forget and too lost to ever fully remember. She vanished on a morning so still it felt like the world was holding its breath. The snow was fresh, untouched, the sky too bright for what would come. And when Elias woke to silence, real silence, not the soft rhythm of her breath, not the shake of her fur near the door, something inside him snapped without sound. He called her name once, twice, 10 times his voice roar against the frost, but there was nothing, no tracks, no sign, no scent, just the brutal absence of everything that had once made him feel less alone. The forest that had once welcomed them both now swallowed his calls with indifference. He searched for hours, then days, then weeks, until hunger and frost drove him back to the cabin that now felt too large, too empty. He stopped speaking to the villagers who tried to comfort him with stories of wild things and nature's way. But what did they know of bond, beyond reason of a heartbeat that ran beside your own? He stopped, speaking altogether, really only nodding when required, living in a kind of quiet that thickened with each passing day, not because he chose it, but because words had nowhere left to go. Each winter after that, he listened harder, hoped, quieter, dreamed less. The nights became longer, not just by season, but by spirit. And though the years passed and his hands aged, and the world forgot she did not fade for him, her absence became a second presence, a shadow that walked beside him like memory, with teeth, and in that long silence, he became something else, not broken, but buried, folded inward like a letter never sent, waiting, waiting, waiting. Let me pause here for just a moment. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? Have you ever had someone, maybe a person, maybe even an animal, remember you after long years apart? That quiet moment of recognition, like time never touched the bond between you. If stories like this speak to your heart, don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more ahead, and every chapter will find you right where you are. It began with a voice not hers, but a child's high and panicked echo, slicing through the still afternoon, a scream about a ghost, a white beast drowning in the river. And Elias, who had trained his heart not to flinch for years, felt something in his chest shatter wide open before thought could intervene. He was already moving faster than his knees should allow, faster than fear could stop him, because memory has a pulse, and it had just begun to race again. The path to the river blurred around him, but inside, everything was sharp too. Sharp the smell of wet pine, the slap of wind, the sound of rushing water, and beneath it all the question he hadn't dared ask in 10 winters. Could it be? Could anything that's sacred survive this long? Or had grief finally taken on a cruel shape to mock him? He reached the bank, breath burning, and saw her, or what might have been her, limp pale against the dark current, barely clinging to the edge of this world, and something ancient in him took over. He didn't think of the cold, or the depth, or the crowd gathering behind him. He only knew he had to touch her, to know. And as his fingers closed around the soaked tangle of fur and bone, her eyes flickered open, and time didn't just stop. It reversed a decade of silence, collapsed in one heartbeat, and every memory came rushing in. The way she used to curl at his feet, the way her head tilted when he hummed the scent of her breath in the snow. All of it flooded him like fire and frost, colliding, and in that one impossible moment. The only thought that remained was not how or why, but simply this. She remembered him. She didn't move at first, only breathed in shallow, fractured rhythms, her body slack in his arms, as if unsure whether this was death or dream. And Elias, too, knelt frozen in the river, his hands trembling, not from cold, but from something far deeper, something ancient and fragile. He leaned closer, not speaking, not daring to speak. The silence between them was louder than any cry, and then slowly, impossibly, she opened her eyes, not wide, not sudden, just enough to let him see. And what he saw broke him open. They were the same eyes, not just in colour, but in depth eyes, that had once watched him carve wood under moonlight, that had followed his every step through, snow and fire eyes that had trusted him beyond the borders of instinct. And when they met, his now changed, now weathered something inside him came undone. He lowered his forehead to hers, with infinite care, as if any sudden motion might end the spell, and he whispered her name not loudly. Not to prove, but to remember the sound of it on his tongue was a kind of return. And in that whisper, she stirred, not with fear, but recognition. Her body sagged into him, not out of weakness, but release, like a held breath. Finally let go, and she made a sound soft and low. Not a cry, not a growl, but something caught between a sigh and a memory. And it was enough for Elias to know that she knew him, that she remembered. And in that unbearable quiet with the water rushing around them and the world holding still, they found each other again, not as they were, but as they always had been. The bond unspoken, the trust unshaken. Time had weathered them, but not broken them. And as villagers watched in stunned silence, no, words were needed. This was not a reunion. This was the return of something the world rarely gets to witness, something lost and found something holy. They didn't rush back into the world. They stayed by the river as if afraid that moving too quickly might break whatever fragile miracle had found them there. Elias built a fire with slow, practiced hands, and she lay beside it, not curled tight in pain, but stretched long in the way of animals who no longer feel hunted. Her head rested near his knee, not touching but close enough to feel the warmth of him. And when he reached out, brushing the side of her neck with fingers roughened by years, she didn't flinch, just let out a slow breath, and for the first time in 10 winters, he felt something ease inside him. The next day she ate from his hand a single motion, but it sent a wave through him, strong as any storm. The day after that, he woke to find her standing on uncertain legs staring at him, the same way she had as a pup head, tilted ears forward and in. That look was the first spark of play of memory, not just surviving, but returning. He laughed, not a full sound, not yet, but enough to startle the birds. And she took one slow step closer, pressing her body against his in a silent declaration of trust. He didn't speak, didn't need to. Every gesture became a word, every glance a sentence. Days passed, and the villagers came not to ask, but to offer. They brought food. Blankets watched from a distance, and in their silence was respect and wonder. Elias walked through the village differently now, not lighter, not louder, but steadier, as if something that once made him whole had been returned piece by piece. Luma followed him, limping less each day, her fur still scarred, but her spirit rising. And though they had missed so much, though time had taken more than it gave, what they found in each other was not a return to what was, but the birth of what still could be. Not healing through forgetting, but healing through remembering, and in the quiet of evening when the fire burned low and she rested her head beside him once more. Elias closed his eyes, not in grief, not in longing, but in peace, because some silences are not empty, they are full of everything that matters. Some bonds don't fade, they wait, they endure in silence, in longing, in the space between seasons, and when they return, they do not ask for explanation or apology. They simply exist again, whole and unchanged, beneath all that time tried to steal Elias. No longer searched the woods for what was gone, because now it walked beside him. Not as a memory, but as breath and warmth and presence. And Luma no longer ran from the world, because her world had come back to her. Not in the shape of safety, but in the shape of home. They had been lost. Yes, broken even, but not beyond repair, because real connection doesn't vanish. It sinks into the bones. It waits in the quiet. And when it returns, it does so without noise. Only a look, a touch, a breath. And in that stillness, everything is different. Everything is healed. Some love stories are not loud. They are steady, they are sacred, and they never truly end.